Okay, so we started in that stage, that is what was happening to the comparative literature of British Isles, and we also tried to focus why it is called British Isles. That means UK, we know that that is a combination of 4 states, and the states we know, that is England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. That is the combination of United Kingdom. That is, apart from these 4 states, there are some other states also. So at the initial stage, a question came to the writer of that book, that is Susan Bassnett, that what and which literature will be calling the comparative literature of UK. And in this regard, he answered that many departments and many colleagues, they had been working especially on German language, French language and other language, and they are also doing the activities of comparing German language with English language or others. So the term actually started, which literature will be calling the comparative literature of Britain. Okay? And here, in that perspective, there was an organization that is started, that is called the British Comparative Literature Association, and that is started in 1975. And British Comparative Literature Association, and that association, what this association will do, which literature will be calling British literature, because British, this word is derived from Britain, but we see another entity, that is the UK, and UK is an entity of 4 states, and Britain is a part of UK. So British comparative literature, what will it be meaning? Okay, that question came in discussion, and for this reason there is a problem, how and in which way we will be calling British comparative literature. And for this reason the title is so, that is the comparing the literature of British Isles. It means that United Kingdom is a combination, not only the combination of 4 states, it is the combination of some other states. Actually there is a state, actually this is that its name is the Isles of Man. And Isles of Man, you look here, can you see the map? Oh, that is the we can use it as a pointer. United Kingdom, and also this Ireland. And here, this is an ocean, and here there is a state, that is the Isles of Man. Isles of Man had British independence, dependency. That means British crown is the crown of this state, but it is not like Ireland. They are independent, they have self-governing body, but itself they are in the part of British. So will the literature of these Isles of Man be called British literature? The question is that. Apart from that, there is another portion, that is the Channel Islands. Okay? Channel Islands, it is also included in English dependency. English dependency, that means you see that is, this is the map. This is France, Belgium, UK, and here there is Ireland. Okay? And this is English Channel. And in this channel, you see here is a portion that is called Channel Islands. That islands were under again British government, that means the English crown. They have a combination of several islands, and for this reason their name, its name is so, that is the Channel Islands. So it is a collection of several islands itself. In this part, there are some literatures, there are some cultures. So which literature will be calling the British literature? Literature of Ireland, literature of Scotland, literature of Isles of Man, or literature of the Channel Islands. So United Kingdom is a combination of 4 states, and out of these 4 states we see 2 islands, that is the Isles of Man and the Channel Islands. They were also included in the UK. So which one we will be calling British literature? Because the association, that is British Comparative Literature Association, that was established in 1975. Again the British, that English is the language of UK, that means United Kingdom. English is also the language of all these 4 states, that means 4 countries: Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England, and Isles of Man and the Channel Islands. It is their standard language, but the standard English that was taken from the Northern Ireland or the Midland England, that was taken. But the language used in Ireland a bit different. The English used in Scotland, that is a bit different. And also they had a language that is Celtic language, and Celtic language is a group of related languages descended from Proto-Celtic, Common Celtic, and they from a branch of Indo-European language family. Welsh is an official language of Wales, and Irish is an official language of Ireland and of the European Union. So in Ireland they have an official language, Irish. In Wales they have an official language, Welsh. But all these areas there is a antique language. That language is called Celtic language and Celtic cultures. So this Scottish question made from the complex by the rise of the 20th century Scots of Lowlands and the Germanic language and the variant of English. So the Ireland, Scotland, and England and Wales, they have their different languages. They are English, but their English is different from others. And they, according to that perspectives, okay, also we see many literature or many writers, they are from Ireland. So we call the writer Irish writer, English writer, or British writer. Okay, some question came, especially Seamus Heaney, Seamus Heaney, not Heaney, objected for all inclusive use of this word British. He said that he will not be called British writer, because he said that he is born and he has produced literature in English, but he is an Irish nationalist, and for this reason he condemned that I will not be calling British writer, I will be calling Irish writer. What does it mean? What does it mean? That is, it means that the people of Ireland, the people of Scotland, and the people of Wales, they have their different identity, and for this reason they wanted to express themselves not as a British writer, they wanted to express themselves as an Irish writer or as an Scottish writer. There is the terminological problem that what we will be calling the British comparative literature. Okay, and in this perspectives also, this influence a much when in 1922 founded the Irish Free State, who became the Republic of Ireland in 1937. Scotland তোমার হাতে কি তুমি জেট ক্যাপ পরেছো, তোমার হাতে কি মোবাইল, তোমার হাতে মোবাইল? হ্যাঁ, আচ্ছা, এবার অফ করে দাঁড়িয়ে থাকেন। আর যাদের যাদের মোবাইল হাতে আছে তারা প্লিজ মোবাইলটা একটু ব্যাগে রাখেন। হ্যাঁ, মোবাইলটা ব্যাগে রাখেন। তোমরা দুজন চলে আসো, সামনে চলে আসো। In 19 এখানে দেখতে পারবেন। In 1922, Ireland declared it a free state, and also Scotland was joined to England through the accession of Scottish King James Stuart in 1603. Following the death of the childless English Queen Elizabeth I. And there were other. Wales had been incorporated to the 13th century, and although all through a guerrilla war was fought for several centuries, the accession of the Tudor signaled the absorption of Wales into what would eventually become the United Kingdom. So these states, that means Ireland, Scotland and Wales, 400 years back these states were independent. In 1922 Ireland declared itself a free state. In 1937 Scotland also joined, and in 1603 Scotland joined under UK government, and also Wales also joined in this way. That means United Kingdom has an identity. So here you see, that is some incidents were there. That is James the First, that is in Edinburgh Castle, and from 1567 to 1625 the first Stuart King of England, and 1603 to 1605 who styled himself the King of Great Britain. James was a strong advocate of royal absolutism, and his conflict with an increasingly self-asserting parliament set the stage of the rebellion against the successor Charles the First. Okay, and we see another incident, the House of Hanover, whose members are known as the Hanoverians is a German loyal house that ruled Hanover, Great Britain and Ireland at various times during the 17th to 20th century. Okay. And the Jacobite rising in 1745, also known as the 45 Rebellion or simply the 45s, was an attempt by Charles Edward Stuart to regain the British throne for his father James Francis Edward Stuart. Okay. So this country, again House of Tudor, and also the formation of United Kingdom in 1936. From 1536, Henry VIII decided to conquer Ireland and bring it under crown control, so the island would not become a base for future rebellions for foreign invasion of England. In 1541, he upgraded Ireland from a lordship to a full kingdom. Henry was proclaimed King of Ireland and at the meeting of the Irish Parliament. So, United Kingdom that was formed after 1536. Okay. So, that was the king, that is Sir Thomas Watt, a 16th century English politician, ambassador, lyric poet credited with introducing the sonnet in English literature. So Watt, William Dunbar, he also was an Scottish maker or marker, poet active in the late 15th century and the early 16th century. A bardic tradition, bards were almost the most respected people in the land, high status. Huh? Mobile to the and this, they could then retell a famous story, Welsh story, in the style of bardic tradition and discuss why birds were held in such a way. So, in these four countries, that is Scotland, Ireland, Wales and England, they have their different past, different history, different kings ruled this country in several times. And in this way, they have their individual identity and they have their individual past. It means that they have also their own literature. So when we will be calling British literature, then which literature we will be calling? Will that be Scottish literature? Will that be Irish literature? Will that be the literature of Britain or England? Okay. And both Cornish and Manx are Celtic language. Among the all languages, all countries nowadays use English language. But apart from the English language, they have their original or the primitive language. That sort of language are called Cornish and Manx, M-A-N-X, Manx, are Celtic language, but have virtually disappeared. In contrast, Irish, Welsh, Scots Gaelic. In Scotland, a type of language they use that is called Gaelic language. That language is still, if you visit nowadays, the people living in Scotland, they will be using English language in such a way that you can understand. It is their original language, that means that's called the Gaelic language. So the Gaelic language, Celtic language and Cornish language, Manx language, they are all the variation of English language, and they have their, what we can say, that means the primitive language. Okay. And in their language, of course, if language becomes a nation's identity, so which language will carry the significance of British literature? Which language, which literature of which language will be calling the literature of UK? Okay. So here that is that comes in the questions that which literature, that means the terminological problem. So mentioning UK, we will be calling the literature of all these states and all the languages used in all these parts of UK. That means Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and the other parts of this world. And the Sorley MacLean, the great Scottish Gaelic poet in the 20th century, chose his poem, The National Museum of Ireland, because it too has so much history in it, so much of the tragic history of Scotland and of the world as well as the Ireland. A Gaelic, as he is at a Gaelic, must love Ireland as well as Scotland. So here we see not only they have their language, they have their poet, they have their literature as well. So we can't call a Scottish literature as a British literature and as the literature of British Isles. So that was the history that moves on. English speaking Irish writer, back at his Celtic mythic inheritance. Okay, so in Ireland the Gaelic language was used in Scotland, but in Ireland, apart from the Irish language, another language was used, that is Celtic language. And Celtic language related to their mythical past. The language is some nation's identity. In that perspective, Celtic language is the identity of the Irish people, as soon as Gaelic language is the identity of Scotland. Okay. So this Celtic mythic inheritance, the importance of the world of Celtic myth for contemporary writers is enormous, and for it offers an alternative to Teutonic mythology of the Anglo-Saxon world. John Montague, the Northern Irish poet, sums up this sense of being touched with the ancestral past in the last times in his poem, Like Domens round my childhood and old people. Ancient Ireland indeed, I was reared by her bedside. The ruin and the chant, even I, an averted hand, formation, pioneers of family and local feud, grand figures of the fear and friendliness. It means that not only Irish people had their language, they have their culture, they have their mythical past, they have their cultural inheritance. So with all this, in the UK, Ireland has a different identity, Scotland had a different identity, and Wales had a different identity. Okay, so whenever we will be calling the literature of British Isles, we have to compare all the literature from all parts of UK. That means not only the literature written in English language. We have to compare literature, culture, and mythical tradition of all these four states, including the Isles of Man and the Isles of Channel Islands. Okay, so that is the incidence of the terminological terms. It means that the failure of comparative literature scholar within the British Isles to consider comparatively the development of different literary traditions. So the question was asked, which literature will be calling the British comparative literature? Then we got so many information. What are the information? That means there are 4 states under UK, and not only the 4 states, we have also the states like 2 islands, that is Isles of Man and the Channel Islands. So including these 4 areas, they have their own identity, their language. Just for an example, we have got several Celtic language, Gaelic language, and also Manx language and the Cornish language, okay, and Welsh language, Irish language. So this language is their identity. This language, this poet also claimed that I am brought up in Ireland. I have I have got the culture when I was a child over there in England. So I am accustomed to all the culture of Ireland. So I belong to Ireland. So if I belong to Ireland, of course the literature of Ireland should have a different identity. Okay. And that different identity should be incorporated in comparative literature of British Isles. So the United Kingdom is it has a political identity. That means 4 states are included in a nation. And it has a geographical identity. Every country will be, and also the administrative will be there. So when we will be calling the literature of British Isles, that means we have to compare the literature of all 4 states and also the literature of Isles of Man and the Channel Islands. So in this regard, the terminological problem exists that whenever we will be calling the British literature, we can't simply calling the literature that is written in English. So English literature or the literature of British Isles will be the literature that are produced in all the parts of UK and also including the Isles of Man and also the Channel Islands. That is about the definition of comparative literature in the British Isles. And there are some other things. Here some other analogies are there, that is comparative Britons. We can see over here, that is, we should read this. We begin by arguing the literature produced by writers of the British Isles could be compared without any understanding of problematic of Britishness, and that the difficulties of using the term British could not be understood without some sense of the use made of that term at different moments in the past. So what is the history related to the word British? Okay. The dominance of English as a language, as a literature and as a political system has resulted in a marginalization of the great deal of marvelous writing from elsewhere in the islands. So the powerful has England become, and many students learning English as Britain as the synonym for England, and some even see London as synonymous with England. The terminology of English literature and the English studies is used all embracing, so that Welsh, Scottish, Northern Irish and Irish writers are frequently included within a syllabus without any references to their different point of origin and different literary tradition. And this tendency must surely have contributed in large part of the absence of attempts to create a comparative literature of British Isles, combined with the difficulties presented by the underlying political agenda. So the literature of Scotland, the literature of Ireland, all literature are included and called English literature. Okay. Is it okay or not? Kavanagh may claim Joyce as a truly parochial Irish writer. But a great many English literature courses have taken Joyce over and placed him alongside D.S. Lawrence and Virginia Woolf. And that means Virginia Woolf and D.S. Lawrence, they can be an example of English writer. But can James Joyce, who was born and brought up in and wrote literature in Ireland, can his literature be called English literature? That is the question. And acknowledging the existence of Irish literature would improvise a great many English literature degrees. Okay? So today, the benefit of the post-colonial theory as it is developing with the methodological tools provided the gender-based criticism and the cultural studies expert in Richard Johnson and as a Marxist critic like Terry Eagleton both acknowledge that their dead to feminist work in returning to the personal to the forefront and abolishing the myth of objectivity of literary scholarship. So again and again the question comes, that is Irish literature, Scotland literature and Welsh literature, all literature should be counted equally. Okay, that all literature cannot be called English literature. So if we put the identity of all literature, that means Irish, Scottish and Welsh literature, that is the total term, that is the British comparative literature will be. That means whenever we will be calling the school of British comparative literature, then we have to count the literature of all these parts. And in another point, we can't call all literature as English literature. That means Ireland will have individual identity, Scotland will have individual identity. So whenever we will be calling British comparative literature of British Isles, that means we have to compare the literature of all these parts because they have political identity, geographical identity and the identity of their own language, all culture and all own literature as well, just like Irish literature and the literature of Scotland. Okay, so British comparative literature started with the idea of placing. What is the placing? That means we can put a literature at the side of other literature. Then we move to the definition of British comparative literature. We started our discussion with this idea that which literature will be calling British literature, observing and analyzing several historical background and the several historical background of several languages. We have understood that in the UK we have 4 states. Apart from these 4 states, we have some other Channel Islands and the Isles of Man, and in these islands we have seen they have different literature, they have different culture and they have different mythological background as well. And if we take British comparative literature as an entity, we have to compare the literature of all these parts. Okay, so that is the thing we want to tell in this class. Some other things are there. Okay, so you will be reading with all these things, and many, especially the Sima Seni, he claimed many things. That means he said that I shouldn't be called English literature, English writer. I should be called Irish literature. If comparative literature will be comparing the languages of all nations, then Irish language and the Irish literature should be compared, and the literature of Scotland should also be compared in comparative literature. And Sima Seni wrote open later. Okay, you will be reading that.